Hello and welcome to a short and sharp Scotland Rugby News podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison. Before we get right into a quick word from our sponsor, Scotland Rugby News podcast is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV tonight. There are thousands of jobs all across Scotland and you can find the one for you at S1 Jobs. So go on, start your search today. Gavin Harper, what... now 10 days, I think it's been for Scottish Rugby.
I mean, last week we were sitting here about the sort of woulda, woulda, shoulda about beating the All Blacks, and this week the mood's somewhat different. I mean, it was grim.
Is the mood different? Do you
The
think
mood
is different?
The mood is different. The mood is. I think people were reasonably pleased with the performance last week. I think most people would have taken Scotland being right in it with 20 minutes to go. I think the frustration when you sort of pick through the game last week was that we had Scotland handed the All Blacks 17 points, and some of it was pretty soft, as the players have admitted themselves. And I mean, the last 35 minutes or 25 minutes even on Saturday was about as soft as I've ever seen from a Scotland team. I mean, it was shambolic. It was just absolutely. I mean, even in the darkest of the Matt Williams times, and I can never remember Scotland playing like that for such a long period and not being able to get a grip back on the game at all. I thought it was really worrying.
Right, so let's rewind the tape. The All Blacks is the All Blacks. We've never beaten them before. I still find a bit of local bias and a bit of rugby snobbery in that we should beat teams. But Argentina, Filippo Contepone is possibly one of my favourite humans in rugby. And he was very... he said this before, but in the pre-match chat he gave, we're resting players because we can't talk about resting players and then not do it. And very few other coaches talk the way he does about that, and I love him for that. But he knew he had those players to come on. If Scotland show a little bit more patience, they go 28-0 up and that game's finished.
Yeah. And I think that's where the frustration comes, that Scotland don't show that patience. Too often Scotland panic and all of a sudden, and I mean, Finn Russell's pass, the big wide loopy pass that Iskro picked off, was the start of it all. And people have seen people.
Yeah, it wasn't Gregor Townsend that threw that pass.
No, totally. And the players, and to be fair to the players, we obviously spoke to Sione after the game. There's a piece just gone out on the site with you and Ashman, and they both have said, and Kyle Steyn said yesterday, it's our fault. The Kyle Steyn piece isn't out, but the players are all saying that's on us. Like, we need to take responsibility for that. I think the wider problem is that this Scotland team under Gregor keep having these massive wobbles in games. I spoke, I think, last week about
This is not a Gregor. This is not new to. This is not a Gregor Townsend thing.
I think the where it becomes an issue is that his team have that repeated pattern of massive dips in games where they ship loads of points that other teams, I'm not sure, have in the same pattern of. I mean, I'm not saying that the All Blacks game was a pattern of a dip, but like you've 17 points down, and they haven't had to do anything for two tries. Wales this year, they almost threw that away and survived. Wales and Cardiff last year, they almost threw away a 27 point lead. Italy in the Six Nations in Rome, they they had tried this aloud and they stopped playing. The concern, I think, is these players don't seem to have the ability to adapt on the pitch and then adjust to these situations. I mean, when Scotland were up against it, Finn was kicking all the restarts short, and you think you're almost like that. To me, that doesn't make any sense. And then as people have pointed out, what impact can Gregor have on the game with his bench? I wasn't sure about no second row on the bench to begin with. That obviously backfired when Gregor Brown went off. There's a bit of bad luck in that. But
I think. Sorry to butt in, but on the bench, one of the things I'm interested in is why he went to 5-3 instead of 6-2 against Argentina.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. I mean, Argentina normally go 5-3, but they're probably one of the most physical teams in world rugby. So if you're going 5-3, to me, you need a recognised second row. He talked the week before the New Zealand game about needing the power of Marshall Sykes. All of a sudden, we don't need power and we need two guys who are going to come on when the game breaks up. Well, the game broke up, they came on and had absolutely no impact. And I think no matter who the personnel are, I'm worried at the lack of impact Scotland are getting from their bench. I thought they were virtually non-existent against New Zealand, and I thought they were even worse. I mean, Doohan came on and they moved Kyle Steyn into the centre. Now, when at the squad announcement, Gregor was asked, do you see Kyle Steyn as being a guy who could cover 13? And he more or less said unequivocally no. So all of a sudden, with 20 minutes to go in a game that you're really up against it, you've now moved him into a position that he doesn't even play for his club. Was that, and I get that Doohan's the X Factor player and maybe he could have changed the game, but Scotland didn't even look like getting him the ball at that stage. So I didn't really understand that. To have two guys, we often talk about how often front rowers do 80 minutes, to Pierre going 80 minutes and not even for there not to be a thought of fresh legs. What does that say about the trust that they've got in somebody like Nathan Macbeth? And similarly, George Horn.
Yeah, there's a lot in here. So the All Blacks and Argentina, there were huge performance positives in both of those games, but there were things that we can't explain. Is a Pierre who is, and they're looking at the science, like they're looking at the data, and Pierre's numbers must have said, look, for what we've got on the bench, it's better having a Pierre who's played 70 minutes. There are things like that I do wonder about, but they're based on things like that are based on data. But there are bits on, there are bits that are just absolutely based on gut, like things that the gamble were, if Finn makes that pass, things go. To lose that try was gutting, but to then compound it was gutting. That's not Gregor Townsend. That's not and the players have held up their hands as well they should. It just felt like it unraveled, and having been a coach, not at that level, we all know that, but you can be looking at it going, how do I rescue this? What do I do? He tried some things and then didn't try others.
Yeah, and 100%.
For Tom Jordan, George Horn, not to get on, but then Tom Jordan, who are you putting him on for? Were you putting him on for Finn, thinking that Finn's Finn is Finn Russell?
Well,
you put him on for Sione, so you're taking your captain off at a time where you think you need your captain.
Come on. Yeah, Tom Jordan did come on. They threw Tom Jordan on after the last Argentina try for Darcy, which
sorry, and that's what I mean. But it wasn't. That's like when you make the sub with no long to go. Like that's Like what do we do now? What I mean is the ability to make impact, to go in a position where you've got the chance to do something. George is obviously a straight swap for Jamie, but none of us, if Jamie Dobie had been listed to start without Ben White being ill, nobody would have really batted an eye because of what he did against the All Blacks and how he's been performing. So, and George wasn't in the squad. So there are decisions that I can figure. I find the bench a really interesting one because Gregor looks like he's become a 6-2 coach and went as 5-3, and I wasn't sure if that was just how do we get Duhan into the 23.
Yeah.
But the impact of that elsewhere, and I'm not a lover of 6-2, 7-1, any of that nonsense, but it was what it was. And I was gutted when Gregor Brown went off because I thought that back row, had the ability to do it. It lost that ability to put in a second row. So there was just so many things that you're watching unfold in front of your eyes with very little opportunity to do anything about it. And Argentina, when Carreras came on, I don't know if you've ever watched the movie Remember the Titans, when the quarterback gets injured and Sunshine comes on and goes, "I've got this." Like Carreras it felt like he was like Sunshine. Like he's just coming on. Boys, I've got this. It's fine. Yeah, I've got this.
He was
the Damien McKenzie of
magnificent.
But having Damien McKenzie to not start against England, like what does that kid have to do to get a start? But Carreras is the starter. He replaces somebody who didn't just kind of functioned. Carreras comes on and just goes, "Lads, I've got this," and was exceptional.
Do you know the other? Yeah, I mean, he was absolutely magnificent. I think a wee bit lost in all the criticism of Scotland has been Argentina were absolutely superb in that,
and they took Montoya off.
Yeah,
but Montoya went off and they won the game. Like the comeback was on, but they won the game with Montoya off the field.
I think the confidence they've got and the blend they've got, and I think at the start of this campaign, we were talking about Scotland being in a sweet spot with a number of caps and the age profile of the players and all this stuff. The idea that Argentina can bring off Julian Montoya and send on Pablo Matera and Santi Carreras, and I mean they've got guys I see they've called up a couple who, like Albornoz, the 10 who started against the Lions. Do you know? He looked like he was going to be their first choice, undisputed 10. Prisca and Telly scored 2 tries against Wales, and then stunk the place out at Murrayfield for 45 minutes, got hooked, and on came Carreras, who was playing like Dan Carter. He was unbelievable. But I just think if we're so confident that this Scotland team's in its sweet spot and all that stuff, everything, the caps, the age, it all aligns to them being successful, why have they got such little ability to manage situations like that on the pitch and sort it themselves? And I agree that's where Gregor takes the criticism because he's the coach, but as Sione said, we're going to have to cop it because we're on the pitch and we've all got to take a look at ourselves. And I think when you look at Scotland's leaders, I thought when it all started to unravel, Finn sort of went missing. I thought Blair Kinghorn had another really difficult game. I'm not sure what's going on there, but that didn't go well. I thought Darcy, Darcy was Darcy and battled away. But Scotland looked all over the place. And I think that's the worry. That's the bit. And then there's not guys coming on from the bench. And we talk about Greg Laidlaw being back in the Scottish Rugby setup now as a coach. What we would have done for a guy like him to come off the bench and just say, right, we just need to get a grip of this for 10 minutes. We just need to they need to not score. Because it would have just steadied the ship. But what I would say is the atmosphere and the nature of disgruntled fans at the end is like something I've never seen at Murrayfield before. And I think that's where the whole Scotland team have work to do to get these supporters back on side, because if you use social media as any kind of barometer, or listen to the people that were in the stands on Sunday, people are not happy.
No, people are not happy, and they have the right to not be happy and express themselves. I don't agree with it, but that's me, not them. One of the, and I was chatting to somebody yesterday, and I said one of the issues is it's Tonga this weekend, and I doubt that team is going to be given the chance to remedy what's happened. There's a long time between drinks, so we're now looking at that team not forming up again until the Six Nations. So that's a long time to stew on it. I talk about this with the international break. If you're a club team and you lose your game before the international break, you've got a long time to sit on that before you get a chance to make it right. When I was a coach or a player and you lost on the Saturday, you couldn't wait to get to a Tuesday because you felt like, right, at least I'm back on the horse and I'm ready to go again. But there's a long time. The team against Tonga, I'm really interested to see how that selection works. How do you get back on the horse with Tonga? Do you use it to get back on the horse? Does Blair need a rest? But then he's not going to get a rest when he goes back to his club. But if you're Contepomi, you're probably saying to Blair, you need a rest. Stay, I would imagine if he's not available, the club would call him back, though. Does Finn, we all know Finn's first choice 10, but do you put somebody else in there looking ahead in case we don't have Finn? Who starts at 9? Does Ben White just get stood down now? Jamie Dobie gets to play another game, give him some momentum. George sits on the bench. I don't know. Front row's obviously another one where talking about accumulating caps. Pierre looks to be first choice. Xander is first choice, but do you start somebody else against Tonga and have Pierre on the bench to come on and make an impact? What do you do in the second row? Does Gilco get a rest? I'm really intrigued to what the selection will be, but the fallout from Argentina is not going to go away after Tonga.
I think that's it. I think the Tonga game is almost the one you now don't want, because you beat Tonga by, and I'm not trying to be disparaging to Tonga, but you beat Tonga by 100 points and nobody bats an eyelid. If Scotland win by 80 and there's a spell where Tonga score back-to-back tries, people in the stadium will say it's happened again.
It's hard to win against Tonga.
It is hard to win. And look, I expect Scotland to win on the scoreboard and win probably quite comfortably. I think there was a few of the big name and big in size Tongan guys playing for the Tonga 15 against emerging Scotland yesterday, which suggests some of them might be a bit underdone. I think Scotland should have more than enough, even with the potential of making loads of changes. Interestingly, I asked Gregor about that after the game, and he said, you have a plan in mind, but it changes with availability and
you get punched in the face.
Performance, yeah. And I think a few of those guys might go again. I think Sione might play again.
If I'm Sione, I'm knocking on Gregor's door saying I need to play against Tonga.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I asked you and Ashman exactly the same thing. Like, are you desperate now to play next week? And he said, well, of course, because as you just pointed out, the next game's not till February, and everybody wants to put that right as soon as you possibly can. I remember, a million miles from that level, having some sore results on a Saturday, and I probably wasn't desperate to get to training on the Tuesday, but I was certainly desperate to get back out the next Saturday and say, well, hang on a minute, let's sort that right again. Look, I think the team selection will be interesting. We obviously won't get that because it's a Sunday game again. We won't get that till Friday. But the bit for me, no matter who's in the jersey, is they've got to seriously start showing, and to Rob Robertson's column this morning, they've got to seriously start showing that they can play at a level for 80 minutes, because Scotland, and I've said this loads of times on here, Scotland at their best and Scotland at their worst are still miles apart, and too often we see a version of both in the same game, and it's
that's a really fair point.
And I think that's the part that we can't. If you improve the poorest level of performance, they've shown against the All Blacks that the level is high. So then you need to up the bottom bit, and then hopefully it clicks. But for some reason, it hasn't clicked. It hasn't looked like clicking in the 18 months, I think, since the World, or in the 2 years since the World Cup. We've now got less than 2 years till the next World Cup, so I'm not sure where we go from here. And those Nations Championship fixtures were out yesterday, and now like the idea of going to Uruguay or Chile or any of these countries in the summer is done. So it's going to be proper test matches all the way, and off the basis of Sunday's game, I'm not sure how many of them you'd pick Scotland to win.
Yeah, I'm not that excited about the Nations Cup, but that's for another day. I don't know what ticket sales are tracking like for Tonga. I hope it's a happier crowd. I feel sad that we're chasing somebody to get out their job, and there's booze and things. But Andy, I don't disagree with you. And there was some brain farts. There was some things that you can't explain. Saturday, just it felt like we have to leave them out there and see if they can fix it, and unfortunately they didn't. And a lot of the conversations won't necessarily be about the calls they made in the line out or when they kicked. It'll be, right, what was the feeling? Why could we not? Because like they're prepared for it. Trust me, there will be a call not to compound an error. Whether it's ice or blue or whatever it is, there is a call not to compound an error. It doesn't matter. They didn't do that. To lose the try and then lose one within a minute, we're all just staring into the abyss going, what have we done?
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think
David, and like, look, the Six Nations is so hard to win. I can't remember who it was said it's harder to win than the World Cup.
Yeah, it was Jack Dempsey, but yeah,
Jack Dempsey. And now I'm not quite sure I'm on the same page there. But to win the Six Nations, you pretty much have to be perfect, and we've not got any evidence to suggest that we can be perfect. That local bias that I harp on about all the time. France will be back to full strength with Dupont in the Six Nations. England have never been better in the last number of years than they're going to be come this Six Nations. Ireland are still Ireland. Italy are getting better, and nobody can stop that from happening because they are building something. Wales probably won't be as bad in the Six Nations as they were in the autumn because Steve Tandy will have had more time, and the uncertainty they've had over the last 18 months won't be there. And we hopefully go in with a fit, healthy squad, with a fit Xander who's got some rugby under his belt, a fit Finn who's flying with Bath, and then we build the other pieces around it. So it's hard to tell, but I get what you mean, and it's not. I don't think we're going in like we maybe were 2 years ago, going, hang on, we're going to do a Grand Slam here.
Yeah,
I don't think we're there.
It. I think just to pick up on a couple of those points, the discipline point. So we obviously sit virtually right in front of the coach's box, and I think I said last week Gregor was really animated, and he was exactly the same this week. And there was him and I think possibly John DL were not pleased when Darcy Ray gave away 2 penalties basically back to back. And to be fair, we haven't spoken to anybody since the game, and we didn't. Obviously, there was so much going on after that we didn't ask Gregor. But Darcy Ray came off almost straight away, and it felt like he'd been hooked. And certainly, speaking to other people, they fill out a sub form, and he was listed as a tactical change. Now, whether that's because he possibly might have needed to go back on if there had been injuries and stuff, I'm not sure. But it felt like we're bringing him off because we're not having that. That I think if that is the case, then some explanation behind that would have almost, people would have gone, oh, okay, we're not taking people giving away daft penalties 2 or 3 times in a row. I think on the Six Nations one, I think we're not going to salvage much now in terms of confidence or anything like that out of this autumn. I think, in the piece that's now top of the website, Ewan Ashman has said the campaign will be a failure even if we beat Tonga. And do you know what I think? And I think that's pretty honest.
Yeah, and we know that because it was 4 was a wish, 3 was realistic, and looking at both games, 3 was realistic because we could have won one of them, but sometimes the ball bounces the other way, and unfortunately it did in both games. But no, it's absolutely going to be a failure. America, they would have been better for Scotland Day, and this week I'm interested to see. I hope Tonga go hard. I hope they, because I didn't want it to be a massacre, because I don't think that's good for anybody.
Not good for anybody, no.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right.
Well, it's interesting. I'm not sure I feel any better after that.
No, I'm not sure I do either, to be honest. We are due back at Oriam to speak to more of the Scotland squad tomorrow. That'll be the first time we've spoken to them, so we'll get, no doubt, updates on a whole load of things. Finn's availability.
I bet they're all excited about that.
Xander, I'm sure they can't wait. Pete Horn is the coach who has not yet faced the media, and he must, if it is him, I'm not sure it is, he must feel like he's drawn the short straw. So we'll see who we speak to.
I don't know how these things work, but I think it would be wise for Gregor to be there.
Yeah, and to be completely fair, there was one of these. He doesn't tend to do these kind of early in the week ones, but there was one during the Six Nations where he said, "Actually, I think I should front this." So we'll wait and see. Maybe it'll be Gregor again, and we'll keep people updated throughout the week, and then we'll obviously get the team on Friday, and so we'll see what that looks like then.
Yeah, nice. Okay, good to chat to you. Final word from our sponsor. Scotland Rugby News Podcast was brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com right now and upload your CV. There are thousands of jobs all across Scotland, and you can find the one for you at S1 Jobs. So go on, start your search. Let's speak again soon, my man. Look after yourselves, everybody, and hope for a win against Tonga.